ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I'd like to start this question and answer session with a small reminder to myself and to you all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون. Whoever does good, amal salih, whoever does good deeds, be he a man or a woman, وهو مؤمن, and he does it out of iman, out of being a believer, فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ, Allah shall cause him to live a goodly life, a حَيَاةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ, and will give them the rewards according to the best of what they used to do. This verse is telling us that that goal that all of mankind seek, to have a happy and fulfilled life, can only truly come about, as Allah says in the Quran, that whoever wants this hayatun tayyibah, this goodly life, can only come about by doing good deeds and by having iman. Iman, faith, and amal salih, good deeds, are the foundations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us are the foundations for a hayatun tayyibah, a goodly life. When we open up the books of tafsir, and we see how do they explain hayatun tayyibah, a goodly life? They say a goodly life is a life in which there is satisfaction and contentment, rida and qana'ah. Satisfaction, contentment, and happiness. These three words, qana'ah, rida, and being sa'id, sa'ada. These three words are normally used to explain hayatun tayyibah. Whoever wants a hayatun tayyibah, a life in which they are content, a life in which they are happy, a life in which they are satisfied, as opposed to what? As opposed to their opposite. A life in which there is no contentment. I'm forever anxious and agitated, grumbling and moaning, never fulfilled, never truly happy. And this isn't just talking about people who are poor and don't have much material wealth. This also refers to so many people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given mountains of riches to, but they can never quite find that happiness, that peace of mind that every human being really is working towards. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, happiness in our life is very much tied to iman and amal salihat, to faith and doing good deeds. When faith enters the heart, and actions come from that heart which show themselves on the limbs, in accordance with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us and wants from us, then Allah Himself causes the heart of that individual or those individuals to become content and happy with whatever their situation. If we lived in the beginning of the 20th century, 1915, 1920, 1930s, then it's understandable why we would believe that the more material wealth you have, the more money you have, the bigger house you have, the more science and technology you have, the happier you'll become. Of course, World War I, 1914 to 18, and World War II, 1939 to 1945, destroyed that belief, because this country and this continent, Europe, became so rich and so technologically advanced They left the rest of the world behind, really. They left the rest of the world behind. And yet, there wasn't that contentment and satisfaction. Crime increased generally from that time up until now. Marriages broke apart from that time up until now. And even today we are surrounded, at least in this country, we are surrounded by so many goods and material things. We go to the supermarket and the choices we have. There are many people in the world, not a few, but coming into the hundreds of thousands who don't even have clean drinking water to drink in their daily life. The water that we use for our toilets, flushing the toilet, they don't even have that much water to use for drinking and cooking. Possibly 500, 800,000 people a day or thereabouts are suffering like this. We are faced with enormous riches and wealth, and yet this is a society in which antidepressant drugs like Prozac, or its English equivalent, what's the English equivalent of Prozac, do you know? Fluoxetine. Fluoxetine, which is really, it's just an antidepressant drug. The life hasn't made me happy. I have problems. Maybe some of them are truly medical problems. Others are just problems of life, which drink or drugs or partying doesn't really solve. But I've gone for the antidepressants. This country, the United States, a large part of Western Europe, are hooked on antidepressant drugs because of the depression in the land. But you'd think, subhanAllah, how can us people be depressed? And I'm not denying that there are medical reasons for depression as well. But leaving aside the medical reasons, why should a person be depressed when he or she is surrounded by so much? Yes, there is high unemployment. Yes, the taxes that the government seem to be pushing out are affecting the poor more than they are the rich. So there are reasons to be concerned at the human level, but why depressed? Because in reality, once you believe the myth that money and materialism alone will make you happy, and you put all your raja, all your hope in that, all your tawakkul, all your trust in that, then everything other than Allah will let you down. Everything and everybody other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will let us down. Why? Because tawakkul, when we say tawakkul ala Allah, the Prophet ﷺ taught us one beautiful dua. He said that when you leave your house, say Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah. In the name of Allah, in your name do I leave my house. Going into this big wide road. In your name do I leave. Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah. Having tawakkul upon you, having trust and reliance upon you. Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Really nothing can happen to me if you don't want it to, because everything is in your hands. There is no might nor power except with you. And the reason why we say this, have tawakkul ala Allah, is because there are two ingredients for tawakkul. There are two ingredients why relying upon Allah is the right thing to do, which is trust and ability. Allah is fully capable and He is fully trustworthy. And because He is fully trustworthy and fully capable, it is the reason to rely upon Him. I'll give you an example of the opposite. They say, بِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاء. The scholars say, بِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاء. By their opposites are things best understood. So let me give you an example of tawakkul on someone else. Let's say you put tawakkul upon me. And you say, Abu Aaliyah, there is a big army, enemy army, outside my door. I want you to come there Saturday afternoon, 2:30, and help me fight them off. Well, even if I am trustworthy, that when I say yes, I'll be there at 2:30, I'll be there at 2:30. Not 3 o'clock, not 3:30, 2:30. Why? Because a Muslim keeps his word. Right? This is one of the basics of Iman and Islam. A Muslim keeps his wife. But even if I got there at 2:30, okay, I'm 50 years old and I feel like 50 stones, okay, I haven't been in a gym for 20 odd years. The last time I did any sort of martial arts was probably when we had black and white TV. That's how long it seems to be. I won't be able to help you. I might be able to talk to them, but anything more physical. So inshallah, I'm trustworthy in that I will be there, but I'm not capable. So even if I'm there, I'm of no benefit to you. But then there are other people who are capable. One big brother will be there, he'll sort out 10 people. But he has a reputation that every time he says, I'll be there, he's never there. So you know that even though he says, yes, I'll be there at 2:30, even though you know that if he was there, because mashallah, he's strong and he's able and he's physically well endowed and he can take on 10 people, you know that he can do the job, but you have no trust whether he's going to turn up or not. He may turn up, he may not turn up. So when you learn this from him, you tend not to put your trust in him because he might let you down. In my case, I may not let you down by not turning up, but even if I'm there, there's no point. It's as if I'm not there. So every creature has some weakness or shortcoming or inability. They are either not 1,000% trustworthy, or they're not 1,000% able and capable of warding off the harm or the difficulty that I need help in. Allah is the only one. But once you have a philosophy of life that you trust materialism and money, and you pin all your hopes in there, and the advertising, which is the Bible of the time, right? Which is the Bible of the time. The advertising comes in the newspapers, on the internet, on TV, and says, if you buy this, you'll be really happy. If you get a bigger car, if you get a larger house, if you get a coffee maker that makes a instant cappuccino, if you get this, that, and the other, if you get a mobile phone you'll be happy. And then we buy into that belief. And then we go and purchase those things. And we might feel a bit happy and a bit elated for a few days. But it quickly wears off. Because our hearts were created by Allah. And they weren't really designed to be happy by these trinkets and trivialities. They were designed to be made happy through divine love. Through ibadah. Through knowing Allah. Through love of Allah. Through trust of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By having a ta'alluq, a connection with Allah. Hearts are only happy when they're moving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Antidepressants are a result of having a belief, aqidah, or a philosophy of life that doesn't bring in Allah in the equation. I say this not because none of you know this, all of you know this. But I say this because we are in a time in which spiritual poison is in the atmosphere. You remember those factories that we used to have in the 60s and 70s with those big chimneys pumping out all that smoke and that smog, okay? Industrializing countries still have them. Then you know that you don't want to get too close to it. If you're asthmatic, definitely not, because within 2 seconds you'll be like that, right? There is spiritual pollution in the atmosphere in all modern societies. And Muslims cannot help but breathe some of that poison in. We are not immune to that poison because it's around us. But there is a difference between at least let me be aware that this thing is bad for my health. So that even if I end up taking some of it, taking in some of this poison, at least I know not to breathe in too deeply and always to reach out for some right medicine. But if you don't know that this is actually poison happening, we'll be breathing happy and happily and happily, like that, and only to find out, why is my health deteriorating? So the issue is not that we don't know, the issue is we should really understand and remind ourselves and remind our fellow Muslims that as much as we have to live in the modern world, no one is saying wind back the clocks to horses and carts and pre-electricity days. No one is saying that. No one is saying be Luddites, this idea of fighting against technology. But what one is saying is, not technology, but the ideas that gave rise to this technology, the ideas that gave rise to the modern Western world, which has now become not just Western, all around the globe, the ideas that gave rise to them are not Islamic. Islamically, Iman-wise, they're poisonous. And so when we take some of the fruits of this, we should know that happiness doesn't lie in these things. It lies through Iman and Amal Salih. Whoever does good deeds, Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha wa huwa mu'min, and he has Iman, فَلَنُحْيَنَّهُ حَيَاةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ. Allah will give him a hayatun tayyibah. In the midst of difficulties, Allah will give sakina, tranquility in his heart. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah, do hearts find satisfaction. In the midst of, even if he doesn't have much, but he has basics to live on and survive, Allah will give that human being, that believer, contentment, qana'ah, satisfaction, rida bil qadar, contentment with what Allah has decreed for him or her. لَيْسَ الْغِنَى عَنْ كَثْرَةِ الْعَرَضِ وَلَكِنَّ الْغِنَى غِنَى النَّفْسِ. The Prophet said, satisfaction or contentment doesn't come by having many things. And we just have to ask people who have many things, are you really satisfied? And you'll find a big no. وَلَكِنَّ الْغِنَى غِنَى النَّفْسِ. But actually contentment is with the heart being satisfied with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One last thing. Someone may say, but hold on a minute, I'm doing Amal Salihat. I'm praying and I'm fasting and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing Umrah so many times in a year. But why am I not having this Hayatun Tayyibah? Then Shaykh Jalil Ahmed Akhun, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he gave us such a beautiful explanation of this, simple explanation. He said, if you are doing Amal Salih, and of course you're a Muslim, why aren't you getting this Hayatun Tayyibah that Allah has promised? Because along with the Amal Salih, we're also doing sins and disobeying Allah. And if our good deeds are mixed with bad deeds, then the system doesn't work. And he said, just imagine the central heating system in your houses or in the masjid. Or imagine the AC system in a car. If you open the window, if you open the windows and the doors now, and the heating is on, will we feel warm? No. Not because there's a deficiency in the heating, but we've let something in, we've opened the doors to things that should not be opened. If we have the AC on in the car, but we wind down the window, the effectiveness of the AC decreases. If we do good deeds, but don't keep away from the haram, then that's the same thing. The good deeds are effective, but they lose their efficacy, they lose their strength because haram. So along with doing good deeds, we need to be very careful of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram, has prohibited us, in terms of what we may eat, in terms of what we may see, in terms of where we may be, in terms of what we may do. Haram destroys the system of Amal Salih and puts a veil between us and Hayatun Tayyibah. And the next thing you know, even with Quran and dhikr of Allah and prayer, I'm still not getting any sakina in my life, even though Allah has promised it. Not because there is a deficiency in those deeds, but I allowed the haram to come and mix with them. And of course, if you have a beautiful pure drink and you mix it with something najas like urine, the drink is no longer a good drink because of something being mixed. So in that sense, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to do the fara'id and the wajibat, the obligatory deeds and to keep away from the sins and the prohibitions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes this concern deep in our hearts, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He leads us all to hayatun tayyibah in this life and in the hereafter. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Okay, just as we promised, not the most exciting things I like, but let's leave it open to question and answers. And I accept that questions from the khutbah this Friday. If there are any questions from the khutbah, which was about really free speech and insulting the Prophet and a little bit about what happened last Wednesday, Charlie Hebdo and that magazine. Any questions? And other than that, and as I said last week, fiqh questions, try to leave inshallah. Unless you have a question on Hanbali fiqh, which inshallah I'll do my best to answer, leave the fiqh questions, the normal masail alone. Not because they're not important, they're important. Everybody needs to know right now the basic fiqh. But it's just because I'm not skilled in answering anything other than Hanbali fiqh, which is not the dominant fiqh. So we need to have some Hanafi teachers and maybe Shafi teachers present. So other than that, Bismillah. And I have no problem if you don't ask questions as well, because then I can finish it.
Could I ask a question?
One, Bismillah.
So sorry, I wasn't here for your speech, but I would just like to know, just a brief summary of what you would suggest in the current environment. Or would you say that a lot of people who are saying we should exercise patience, etc., maybe they kind of sometimes take it a bit too far because it's concerning the noble personality of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also Muslims sometimes they're a bit far too apologetic. Bear in mind, I don't know what you said, Sheikh. I'm just saying what I've kind of.
Well, I think, though you weren't there in the khutbah, you pretty much summed up, for those of you who are in my khutbah, the brother pretty much summed up my khutbah, where he's saying, he feels, with all respect to other people, he feels that maybe sometimes we can be too apologetic, and he feels sometimes we can be a little bit too over-respectful with those who insult the Prophet ﷺ. And that's a view, that's not like wahi, that's a view, but I share your view. And that was my khutbah. On the one hand, I just tried to explain, because I didn't find many other people explaining this. I explained in the beginning of the khutbah how the norm of the Prophet ﷺ is forgiveness and rahmah and mercy and kindness and gentleness. And I mentioned Hudaybiyah, I mentioned the lady, that she was a Jewess who poisoned himself after Khaybar, and he forgave her. I mentioned Ta'if and how he had the chance to crush the people of Ta'if and he said, no, don't do that. I mentioned Fathu Makkah, that how the Prophet ﷺ forgave his oppressors and persecutors. And I said to the audience that you probably have in your mind many examples of how the Prophet ﷺ forgave the people who attacked him, insulted him, physically abused him, and jibed at him. And there are hundreds of examples, and I just gave 4. And this is the norm. Wallahi, this is the prophetic norm. Okay? And this is what we Muslims, bil jumla in general, know and understand of his seerah and his sunnah. However, I also mentioned in the khutbah that some people are saying, some of our Muslim brothers are saying, no, we should execute people who insult. Where are they getting that from? If they're getting that from the top of their heads, we're not interested. But actually, some of them are not getting that from the top of their heads. And I gave an example in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim of Ka'ab ibn al-Ashraf. Ka'ab his mother was Jew, his father was Arab Mushrik. So because the Jews have nisbah from their mother's side, so he kind of adopted some level of being Jewish. And he aligned himself with the Banu Nadir, one of the 3 great Jewish tribes of Medina. He was quite famous, not very famous, quite famous for being a poet. Nothing top class, but fairly good. And he used this talent to mock and insult the Prophet ﷺ. Especially when the Prophet ﷺ came from Makkah to Medina, he couldn't take this. And then after Badr, when they defeated some of the top mushriks, some of the top names of Makkah died, he was really unhappy. He went to Abu Sufyan in Medina, in Makkah, and it seems like he was telling Abu Sufyan, go and attack the Muslims. He came back and he made poetry insulting some of the sahabiyat, female sahabas, slandering them sexually by name. By name. And he did slander to the Prophet. So on one particular occasion, the Prophet said, he just made it short. He said, "Manli Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, who will, kind of take care of Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf for me. فَإِنَّهُ قَدْ أَذَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ." Because he has harmed Allah and His Prophet. And one of the Sahaba said, "I will, Ya Rasulullah, do you wish me to kill him, execute him?" He said, "Yes." And then the long story in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, how he did it, but in the end he did it. So here, someone slandered the Prophet, and he ordered that he be executed. The only thing about that is, our scholars have a rule, a rule. After they take into consideration this hadith and everything, they come up with two things which was the point of my khutbah, because I didn't think other people had mentioned it enough. One, that there is an ijma', a consensus of the ulama. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah mentions it in Sarh al-Maslum, Qadi Iyad mentions it in the Shifa, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani mentions it in the commentary of Fathul Bari, the commentary of Sahih Bukhari. There is an ijma', a consensus of the ulama, that one who slanders the Prophet or mocks him, or abuses him, or insults him, is put to death, is executed, put to death. The death penalty is on him. And there is an ijma', a consensus. The second thing they say is, there's a rule in Sharia that the had punishment cannot be carried out except by the wali al-amr, except by the head of the state, the amir, the khalifa, the king, the president, whoever. And the third thing is that happened when the Islamic system was there in the land of the Muslims, when the Sharia was operative. When those conditions are fulfilled, one would expect this particular crime to meet its specific punishment. Even if non-Muslims find that puzzling or troubling. It matters not what they think when majority Muslims choose to live under the Islamic system. The ulama were also confronted with what happens if a non-Muslim insults the Prophet ﷺ, but he doesn't live under the Muslim state. He lives in a non-Muslim land. And we Muslims are living under the Muslim state or the Muslim land with the Sharia there. Then the ulama say, no individual Muslim has the haqq, the right, to go and take vengeance for insulting the Prophet ﷺ. Only the head of state, the Khalifa, has the right. He may say, look, send him to us, or he may say to that other government, punish him on our behalf, or he may say, look, maslaha, political necessity dictates, we'll leave it alone. But it's up to him. So there is sometimes, in some conditions, it's nothing to do with us. All we have to do is make inkar of the munkar, hate it in our hearts, and live according to the teachings of the Sunnah as best as we can. Then the third thing is, what happens when insults happen by non-Muslims in non-Muslim lands, when we're living there as citizens stroke minority. Even more so that we are not allowed to take the law into our hand and break the law of the land through murder. So that incident and other incidents like it are haram according to the Sharia, not just the law of the land. But the enormity of insulting the Prophet ﷺ has to be understood. If non-Muslims don't understand it and they don't get it, then that's sad, unfortunate. We'll do our best to try to make them understand. But since they've moved into an age of irreligiousness, okay, in the sense that they don't understand religious sentiments anymore, they don't understand issues of ta'zeem of Allah, respect and honor of Allah, respect and honor of Allah's holy books and Allah's people, the prophets and the messengers, but they don't understand it. And I'm not talking about just Islam, Christianity, that many people just don't understand it anymore. Why would Catholics consider such and such very sacred? Why do Catholics have problems when newspapers and magazines make fun of Jesus a.s. or Maryam a.s.? We Muslims understand it, and we're not Christians. Because we share a same worldview. We understand that Allah has made some things ta'zeem, honoured and sacred. The traditional Jew understands it, the traditional Christian understands it, the traditional Hindu understands it, the traditional Buddhist understands it, the traditional Muslim believer understands it. But the modern mind doesn't. So if they don't understand it, that's not the point. But from our Sharia, it's haram. But as you quite rightly said, my brother, there needs to be a bit of izzah. Our argument should be that since we all agree freedom of speech and expression is invaluable, it's important. Without freedom of speech, you and I wouldn't be sitting here discussing Islam. Without freedom of speech, you and I couldn't make naqd on the shirk of the mushrikun. We couldn't criticize the shirk of the idolaters or the kufr of the kafir, inshallah with respect and good words and whatever. We couldn't. It's the freedom of speech that allows you and I to say these things. But the freedom of speech allows other people to say opposite things. Since you and I, we all should agree that freedom of speech is not only one of the founding principles of modern Europe, I'm talking about Europe from 1600s onwards. And I'm making a simple story out of something which is a bit complex. But when Galileo looked through his telescope in 1460, okay, the 15th century, and found, hold on a minute, maybe the Earth isn't the centre of the universe, maybe the Earth is revolving around other things, not everything revolving around the Earth. Maybe it's not so perfect as the Christian preachers tell us, because now I can see Jupiter has moons and whatever. And I'm making a simple story, it was more complex than that. But since that time whereby Galileo and in this case the scientific community wanted to say something against the established beliefs, but could not, freedom of speech became very important. And it became the building block of this society. And many good things came out of it, many bad things came out of it. But we all agree that in any Western liberal democracy, freedom of speech has some limits. They may be slightly different in different countries. In France, where everything kicked off last Wednesday, you cannot speak against the Holocaust. The Holocaust of the Jews in the Second World War under Nazi Germany. You can't speak against that. You can't even deny the official figure of 6 million Jews were exterminated without being challenged by a law. It's an offence. And there are another 15 or 16 countries in Europe where that is the case. Germany's another one, absolutely. Although given the history, you kind of get it why it happened there, right? And there are other things you can't speak about. If you and I speak something, even if I say publicly, homosexuality, I will never harm anybody who is homosexual. I will never beat them, I will never do this, I will never do it, and I do not call for it, but it is an immoral wrong. I'm homophobic. And that's not the right thing to say. Because now that area is becoming more and more sacred. Hasn't quite reached Holocaust standard, but more and more. Fine. So there are limits to freedom of speech. We are not asking for Islam not to be criticised by anyone. We are not saying that no one should disagree with Islam and its teachings. There's no compulsion in religion. La ikrah fi din. What we're saying is that why is there unnecessary mocking? They call it gratuitous mocking of the Prophet ﷺ or of Islam for no reason. You want to make a critique, a criticism, make it. And hopefully we'll have sabr and we'll have some hikmah in responding to it. But just drawing and making fun of, we've stopped doing that as a society to black people. We've stopped doing that as a society to Jews. We've stopped doing that as a society to Irish. Okay, I know they're races, and Islam is a religion. But now, for Islam and the Muslims, you can draw anything anywhere. Every Arab is what? Hook nose and bali, stupid, ghabi. That's how they're normally drawn, or normally portrayed. How can you do that? So what we're saying is, we have our izzah, inshallah, we hope Allah will keep it in our hearts. And yes, we understand that if you don't bend, you can't dodge the bullets. But there's so far you should bend without losing your self-respect. And sometimes we're trying too hard to please people. Rather, we should be honest to ourselves, honest to others, and hopefully, they will understand why we do what we do, and hopefully they'll realise we still want to be part of Britain and its society and wish well for it, but some of our wishing well is slightly different. We think the best wishings we can make for this society is bringing them to Iman. Many of us believe that if half of these non-Muslims become Muslims, they'll be better Muslims than us, and they'll take Islam further than we could have. Since you can see already, people in this society have remarkable qualities. So we need izzah, and we need hikmah, we need faham, understanding of the Sharia. Not allowed to take the Sharia laws of punishment into our own hands, in this case and other cases, and there is no difference of opinion about that. And this rule didn't come post 9/11, or post Rushdie, or post Charlie Hebdo. This rule came from over 1,000 years back in our books of fiqh and ahkam, and Allah knows best. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep the izzah of Islam in your hearts and in our hearts. It's one of the biggest challenges. And I can't sit here guarantee that I will have izzah. Izzah of Islam is a gift from Allah, and He can take away the gift because of our sins. But we hope that Allah keeps us alive and makes us die upon izzah of Islam and the Muslims. Because as much as we have rahmah and want khair for all people and all creatures, including our non-Muslim citizens, but the people of Iman and the people of Allah and the Banu Islam is one thing, and other than that is something completely different. Now Allah loves the people of Iman and Islam.
Sheikh, one hadith which just to remind us, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi, fa in lam yastati fa bilisanihi, fa in lam yastati fa biqalbihi, wa dhalika adl." So if you see any wrong, you have to change it, not
fight it.
Yes, not change it. فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ, with your hand. If you cannot, then you talk. You should express this. Then even if you cannot, the least thing you can do, at least you have iman. May Allah give you hidayah. From your heart, you can say, this is the mind that you really believe nur Allah bi aqwai. Wallahu mutumu nurihi walau ayatan. So this is what they wanted, to put off the light of Allah with their own mouths. This is what we are seeing. But we have to make sabr, and this is where, as Rasulullah has given us three choices. You cannot, yes, as the Sheikh has said, that the one is the Qadi or the Khilafah who was Khalifa, who has got the right to stop. They have the right. If they cannot, then you talk. MashaAllah, in the media, we can also express our own, MashaAllah, through as the Sheikh has said, the freedom of speech, we can do it. Then the list, we can do, Alhamdulillah, we got Iman, we are feeling, rather you are insulting our Prophet. Because even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't insult the ghosts of non-Muslim, the mushrik, don't, because they will insult Allah without knowledge. Yeah. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is Allah Shaykh.
Barakallah feekum. You hear Shaykh Abu Bakr referring me to just one of our brother Shaykh Abu Bakr keeps referring to me as Shaykh. The reality is, when I was drifting away, being a 16, 18-year-old, 17-year-old, people like Shaykh Abu Bakr in the community, this will be in Leytonstone, were always there gently to remind us, bi'idhnillah, to guide us. So he may say Shaykh and give an impression that there is some type of fadl or precedence I have over him, but this is not, the haqiqah is, it's actually the other way around. So he kind of lets me sit on the chair, even though there is someone else deserving of sitting on the chair. And I just say that just out of the reality of things, so that people not be confused.
So we keep referring to respect, referring to the West or the Western world don't understand Islam. They do understand Islam, and proof of the pudding is what's happening in the media. Even Mr. Portello, the conservative leader, he's giving you a quote from the Hadith and the Quran that if he was a Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam still alive, he would not respond. That gives you a bit of knowledge. They do understand Islam. But what's lacking is that respect. Because when Muslims and the Ummah Islamiyah, when it was in the glory time, we did respect every other religion. وَلَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ. But Imam al-Amir al-Mu'minin, farada al-fidya. Yeah? But is disrespecting to Islam and what's happening? They're trying to mix the two together because they notice that we as a Ummah, we're not united.
You're right. In one sense, what I mean by saying that the West in general don't really understand Islam, I'm not necessarily talking about they don't have knowledge of some of the beliefs and practices of Muslims. I'm talking about from the core, because over hundreds of years, the idea of what we call adab and ta'zeem, respect and honor to certain people and certain situations, because that isn't really there in this culture anymore. They don't understand, they choose not to understand or don't understand why it is that someone can be held so sacred. Their worry is, when you start holding any human being in such high esteem, they will always misguide you. And they say, this is our history. The popes and the priests and all of these people misguided us. But then we had the scientists and the philosophers, and they showed us the way to the truth. So we have to understand, if we understand Europe's history, and it was not the same history for us Muslims in the Muslim land, we didn't have the same history, then Europe comes to this point in their life and their civilization. It's good to understand where it comes from, because it helps us appreciate why are they so on some things very strong and chilled, and why does it seem like their eyes are blinded and hearts are blinded. As regards to someone like Michael Portillo, the ex-cabinet minister, and he's a well-known broadcaster. He was once upon a time, back in the 90s, set to become the next leader of the Conservative Party, but he was defeated in that 1997 election. He's a typical well-educated person in the sense that he knows a little bit of Islam, very respectful of how he talks, but he doesn't get the point, because he's neither very committed Christian, okay, but he has adab in his speech. People like that we possibly could appeal to. So we need to make efforts with our tongue, okay, make inkar with our, as best as we can. But in the end, the best way we can teach people about the Prophet ﷺ is through our own character. The more we can show the nur of the sunnah and the seerah in our own day-to-day lives, in our mu'amalat, not just in the masjid. MashaAllah, I prayed the prayer of a waliullah. Fantastic, Allah will give me a reward. But let me try to be a waliullah in the market. Let me try to be a waliullah in my job. Let me try to be waliullah in the train station. Then the nur of the sunnah and the seerah will begin to show. That, on the long run, will make a very positive difference. And I don't say that because it's a cop-out. I say that because it's all in Allah's hands, and He told us, be like this, and you'll get the consequence. And Allah knows best. So I don't mean that they don't know. They know quite a bit of things about Islam, especially second-hand level, but they just don't have the understanding, the asl. They don't have the basic understanding now, because it's gone. Their life, their society has nothing sacred. In law now, in English law now, as it stands, as far as I remember, you cannot mock or insult the Queen by law. And if anyone sleeps with any one of the Queen's attendants, the punishment under English law is execution. But no one cares about it anymore, because we have got to the level in society that not even the hurma, the sanctity of the Queen, is safe anymore. If the hurma of Allah, na'udhu billah min dhalik, is not safe with people like this, then why should the hurma of the Queen? But actually, there are things that they do hold sacred, but they're not religious things anymore. We just have to say, look, if you don't understand our point of view, then understand this. You hold something sacred that you won't allow us to speak against. All we're saying is, how you feel about that is how we feel about the Prophet. So can we not come to a respectable agreement that let there be critique of Islam, but then let there not be unnecessary abuse of Allah, the Rasul and the Deen, or the Prophets ﷺ in general. Let there be critique, but let there not be this unnecessary, gratuitous offence. That's what we ask. And we ask that we will try to speak to you, قُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا, speak to people well. We hope that you will exemplify this to others well. Speak to people well, even if you disagree and criticise them. In that sense, I respect people like Michael Portillo. He's an atheist, kafir, okay, but he has قُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. He tries to do that, really. And maybe hearts like that we could reach if we get our act together. Wallahu alam wa bihi tawfiq. Now, yes, brother.
Just like you said, when the brother mentioned that we don't have no respect as a Muslims from non-Muslim community. I think that's one of the points why they are mocking our Prophet and as a Muslim as well. Because what have we done? What have we, as a Muslims, as a community, we have contributed to this society last 100 years? We haven't done anything. We built up our own masjid. This is for ourselves. Our own madrasa, our Islamic schools. This is for only ourselves, Muslim community. We haven't done anything for this non-Muslim community. So they don't have no respect for us. Because they're seeing us, we just only us Muslims. That's it.
Well, no, I disagree with that because looking at the France, what was going on in France, and one of the things that Mr. Cameron today and Mubarak Obama, I've called him Mubarak, they're trying to understand why the young kids born and raised in the country and they've got such commitment to show that they are Muslims and you have to respect me for who I am. And the reason being because they've been pushed aside. If you look at France, most of the things that's happening is what they call them the banlieue. The banlieue, no Frenchman will live in there. It's only the foreigners who will go and live in there. And these kids, they grow up, they've seen their grandfather who liberated France, from Hitler. They've been pushed to live in one bedroom with 5 or 6 in one corners, and they didn't even have the quality of the what they call it, the chômage, the army payment, same as them. So they grow up with that thing. That thing is growing up with them. Plus, the history that they're being taught, which is wrong, and now everything is open. They can see. They're talking about beheading. There was pictures that I saw in
1908 on the French stamps.
Yeah, I've seen every single French soldier standing, in Wahran, with their heads on top of stones.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
French.
Yes, they're French. Even Le Pen, he lost one of his eye in one of the wars in North Africa. So it's not about. They created this, and my view. This is my view. You grow up in a society. You grow up, with the teaching, from your father, to respect one another. The kids these days, they challenge you. They challenge you even with their own, parents. Well, don't tell me. No, I've got to say that. I'll have that, with my kids. Why can I say that? Yes, that's my view. If they don't like it, so.
Jamie, can I bring it into context though? Perhaps what Brother Shafi was saying. First of all, what you said, I accept that, and really, nearly every social commentator who has been fair and looked at this issue with the eye of justice had said that you cannot ignore a fundamental problem of Muslim ghettoization and bias against the Muslim communities in France, majority of which who are Algerian. Am I right? Okay, majority?
Okay. Community Algerian, majority.
But perhaps Brother Shafi was speaking about this country, whereby we don't face the same bias as France to their Muslim communities. The Muslim communities here have generally found it freer and less problematic. There is a colonial difference between French colonialism and British. They all have blood on their hands, no doubt. But I hope I'm not biased. Maybe I live because I live in this country. But British secularism tends to be softer and more benign than French colonialism has been. French is like the khalas, and Britain has been a little bit more smiley kind of thing. And Muslims haven't felt overall too problematic. In fact, France, the philosophers and writers of France gave England the name Londonistan because they thought the English community are being too over-tolerant with the Muslims here. You need to be a bit stricter like us in France, how we've dealt with our Muslim community. So there is and there has been a difference. And even the way secularism is in France is slightly different than Britain and vice versa. Here, which is where I thought you were talking about, that question, I don't want to answer it. Have we done enough khidmah, enough service? We've done enough service, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, to our communities. Most of our mosques in the UK are not petrodollar mosques. They are mosques that, bi'idhnillah, came from the money, from the pockets of the people who earned their money with their sweat and blood and business. Most of the halal meat shops are not state-sponsored. It's bi'idhnillah from the hard earnings. So there is khidmah to the community. The question to be asked is, the Sunnah teaches us, the Quran teaches us, the khidmah of the people of Iman should be to any and everybody, even to a dog or a cat, let alone to a non-Muslim, whatever. Have we done enough khidmah, service, to the wider community where they can begin to see some of the beauty of Islam? That's question one. The other question is, even if I think, yes we have, but in their perception, in their nazar, do they think we have? Because a lot of the time it's not what happens, it's what other people think is happening as well. We have to take into consideration. So two things. Have we done enough khidmah? And if we're really honest with ourselves, I might probably agree with Brother Shafi. But you know, this is not deen or fatwa, this is just nazariyah, this is just examining how you feel in the world, how you see. So it's not an issue to divide over. But I tend to agree with you. We haven't done enough service. If we did more service, not that these problems will go away, but they would look at us with a different eye. And the Prophet did, the Sunnah does take into consideration public opinion. It doesn't take into consideration public opinion that they don't like prayer, so we stop prayer, they don't like Tawheed, we stop Tawheed, but other things they do. So when it came to siyasa, politics, here is this, the leader of the Munafiqun, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. Ibn Salul caused more problems and more deaths than Ka'ab ibn Ashraf, 1,000 times over. This man was responsible for so much fitna, directly against the Prophet and directly towards the believers in Medina. And yet when the Prophet was asked, Ya Rasulullah, shall we not execute him? He said, no, don't do that unless people say Muhammad kills his companions. He's a munafiq. Outwardly, he's a Muslim. Outwardly, he said, La ilaha illallah. Inwardly, he disbelieves. So outwardly, you have to treat him as a Muslim. So if the Prophet was worried, if he will execute this man, and he's deserving of execution under any political system, let alone Muslim political system, if I execute them, people outside of Medina who don't understand the dynamics, they'll think, oh my gosh, you become a Muslim and you can get killed by your own prophet. So he said, don't do this unless people say Muhammad kills his followers. So he took, in this particular political situation, he took into consideration public opinion, the greater and the lesser harm. Our ulama say, it actually goes back to one of the great imams of the Salaf, Ikrimah Mujahid, one of the great imams said this. One of them said, the difference between the alim, the true scholar, and the non-scholar is not that the scholar knows good from bad, because actually even we know good from bad, right? We know drinking is bad, okay? And we know praying is good. Right? We know mocking the Prophet is bad, okay? We know praising him, Madhun Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sending salawat upon him is good. The scholar is not the one who knows good from bad, but the scholar is the one who knows better from what is worse. Yani, there are two goods. The alim, the true alim, will know what is the one that we should go for out of the two. And there are two evils. What is the one that we should go for and leave the other? Or there is good and bad. We can only do one or the other. Either do the good or reject the bad, but we can't do both. Then what to do? This requires fiqh. This requires deep understanding. We are in need of ulama and fuqaha who have an understanding of sharia and its goals, an understanding of society, and have a connection to Allah to become our guides in this. In Wallah alam, I could be wrong. The faqih alone, the scholar alone, will not be enough for us. The person of tasawwuf and tazkiyah alone will not be enough for us. But we need guides who blend the two. So they have the knowledge of the sharia and they have the knowledge of the tariqah, of the inward purification. And only then will we have the right leadership in the community. And inshallah it will happen. It's happening and it will happen. But we need to make tawbah to Allah first so that Allah can send down more of this gift. Because it is a gift, right? And if we don't make tawbah, and if we continue in our sins, Allah will withhold the gift. Okay? So that's one thing that we all can do. Otherwise, izzah, khidmah, looking at political realities and including them in our criticism, that's the way forward. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He give tawfiq and basira, more basira to our ulama. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us have ihtiram of our ulama. So, and if we are going to speak to them, give them sincere nasiha through ikhlas, because they're ulama, but we're not the ulama. Okay. When I say ulama, I'm talking about people who have just been with the book and the sunnah and the life of the Prophet all their lives with deep learning, prayer and action. Not some student, talibul ilm like me who studied some years, 10 years, 15 years here, but really, subhanAllah, it's not 10, 15 years, it's really a drop in the ocean. Allah blesses whom He wills. So inshallah ta'ala, khidmah might be the way forward. And don't look at the larger community, start with the local community. And do khidmah because Allah loves it. Do khidmah because Allah loves it, not because you'll get brownie points. And Allah will change some hearts.
Can I share one thing? Because
you can indeed, everyone is sharing today.
You know, the things is Brother Shafi said we're doing only for outside. Yeah, this when you come to the mosque, we do outside because there's only one community here.
Okay.
But when you go outside, like if I do my job, I have to treat everyone in the same level because they're all my customers or whatever it is. So if we can show them is not the Muslim one is there to me, then they will understand, no, he is a true Muslim, because we have to show them our respect, our behavior with them all in the same level.
Absolutely.
If I go my service, if I do my bus for the Muslim one, I have to go for my the non-Muslim one also, he will say, no, this is a true man.
Yeah,
so we have to do it for our bit from our own area.
Yes.
So it will be
absolutely. You're absolutely right. Nothing more can be said about that. We really have to start from our own little communities and just be good people according to the teachings of Islam and the Sunnah. And I'm not necessarily talking about the hat on the head and the beard and whatever. Every part of the Sunnah is really important. I'm talking about more of the usul of the Sunnah. Honesty, trustworthiness, care, compassion. Those usuls, okay, well, the reason why Allah sent what He sent to the companions of the Prophet, because they had those usuls. And then the beard and the miswak and the turban and these other things which are very important came later. When someone says to us, describe the Prophet to us, we are non-Muslims, you tell us something about the Prophet, we don't start reciting the Shama'il Tirmidhi. We say the Prophet was neither too tall nor neither too short, neither too big nor too thin, and his beard was this thick, it only had 10 white hairs in it, and and he said, we don't do a description like that. We say the Prophet was honest man, he was compassionate, he was very godly, he had courage, shaja'ah, yet he had rahmah, and he was always looking at the needs of others before himself. These are all inward qualities of the heart. None of these are zahir qualities of the amalul badan. None of these are actions of the limbs. Initially, all of these are the qualities of the heart. And you can see that Allah has given me some level of ihtiram of the sharia just by my appearance, okay? So I'm not downplaying the outward sharia. All I'm saying is inwardly is where we need to really start strengthening. Okay. Otherwise, the problem is, I've got my beard and I've got my hat, I look outwardly Muslim, and it's saying Abu aaliyah is cheating. People think, well, okay, this man looks like a Muslim, like his Prophet Muhammad. They look, that's what they'll say. Well, he's like that. Probably got it from him. Then 10, 15 of us do it, or it becomes the norm. Then, of course, how can you not think that it must be from that teaching? But yet, I've got the outward. I look outwardly the part. Inwardly, I have to also try to do the part, which is really there. Allah's wanted to, and it really, do we see Islam as a way to just get the minimum benefit, or do we see Islam as a way that brings us to the haqiqah of Allah and to the hadratul ilahiyah, that Allah will bring human beings in His presence and will lift the veil from Himself so that they will see Him, because they live their life of ihsan and ta'budullah, to worship Allah as though you see Him in this world, and Allah lets them see them in the next. This is why our ulama say, he who is unschooled in ihsan will bring more ugliness into this world than good. We need to be people of ihsan. أن تعبد الله كأنك ترى فإن لم تكن تراها فإنه يراك. To worship Allah as though we see Him, and though we may not see Him, know that He sees us. And ihsan, إن الله كتب الإحسان على كل شيء. That Allah loves ihsan, excellence in all that you do. So ihsan in terms of how we do things perfectly, excellently, and ihsan in the way that how we worship Allah with the heart trying to see Allah. People of ihsan are people of beauty. If we're unschooled in beauty, unschooled in ihsan, what can we bring into this world except ugliness, even if I've got a hat on my head and a beard on my chin, and Allah Jalla wa Ala knows best.
I think one of the scholars today, he did summarise it nicely, and he said that we lost the dignity and the teaching of Islam. Because it's true. I mean, we protested at the Rasul and that, but nobody asked the question, what have you done to show? We lost the qana'ah. You know, you mentioned about al-qana'ah and izzah. Some people will lie, you know, because he wants to get something. And this is in how the West perceive, in the perception.
Not just the West. did I give the example today in the khutbah? Anyway, just last week, a couple of days ago, I was with a friend of mine who's a school teacher in India, in Gaya. And you know, we were just talking, and I was just so shocked the way he said it. I was shocked and upset, and I said to him, you know what, shall we stop this conversation? Because actually in my heart I'm beginning to cry. It's making me too sad. And anyway, and what he said to me is, and he's a Muslim, he said, I've just come back from Gaya, and I'm a school teacher in Gaya. Gaya is near Bihar, okay, like say northeast India. Gaya. Gaya. Gaya is already an English way to say Gaya, yeah. And he said, it used to be said in Gaya, which is a very traditional community. Gaya doesn't even have a big shopping mall, okay? It has trains and planes going in, not because of Gaya, because it's just a small ride away from where Buddha was meant to receive enlightenment under the tree, which is why you have an airport and a train station. Otherwise, it's so insignificant place, it doesn't deserve a train station or whatever. It's only because it's near to that historical place. Anyway. So they used to say about the Muslims there that in the old days, you're a Muslim and you've lied? You're a Muslim and you've lied? Meaning it was unimaginable for Muslims to lie. So the non-Muslims, normally Hindus, used to say, you're a Muslim and you lied? Now, he said, now they don't say that. They say, you're a Muslim and you spoke the truth? Because what they expect from Muslims is not honesty. Now, of course, you know, there are political and religious tensions there. But in reality, if we look in our own lives and community, you feel that maybe it's not 100% true, but you can see that there is a lot of truth there. Until we begin to realize our problem is not because we have enemies. We have enemies, and we have some non-Muslims who misunderstand us as well, who are not enemies, but they misunderstand. We have clear enemies, adu, and we have non-Muslims who are not our enemies, but they don't understand us. But the biggest enemy
So ourselves.
Barakallahu feekum. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin.
حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم.
Barakallahu feekum. Shall we begin to close this majlis, inshallah, unless there's a final question? Yes, my brother.
I don't have a question, but I want to make some suggestions.
Bismillah.
I've been saying this at other forums, and I want to share this with all of you. I think one of the shortcomings of us as a community, especially over the last 25 years, where we should have done more, we didn't, from the time of the Salman Rushdie's event, where we had really a great opportunity. This is 25 years ago. I was a little boy, okay? But looking back from that point until now, where the Netherlands opportunity is coming, let's just hope that it doesn't escalate, okay? You don't know what's coming. Just the way the anti-abortion, anti-Semitic, homophobia, all of these laws have been enacted in this country and the rest of Europe, our community did not make a concerted effort towards getting the laws passed in the Houses of Parliament and Houses of Lords, and it takes time. If we would have done that, laws against Islamophobia, then you have this kind of the support within the law that if someone makes a slur on you or on your religion or whatever is happening now on the honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you could easily challenge. You can easily, it's so difficult if you're on the street, even here now, if someone says anything homophobic or anti-Semitic or abortion, whatever, so many other things, someone can easily prosecute. Someone can easily make and say, okay, these are the witnesses and that's the recording, blah, blah, blah. But that is where we really did not do much. Well, it's never too late. We can still do that at several levels. But we need to get the laws passed. Make an effort through, as a start, by making online petitions. It's really easy right now because of the online e-petition through the government website. And you get these 100,000 threshold, and after that it will be discussed in the Houses of Parliament. At least a discussion to start. That the red line has been crossed so many times that we as a community want to table a motion that look, we will not accept this. If this is said, then this is Islamophobia. This needs to be in the law, that person will be prosecuted. At the moment, anyone can just go on saying whatever they want. And we feel the fear. We do feel the fear. Okay?
No, you're right.
But that is one step which we should have done over the last 25 years from that point until now, which we didn't do as a community. Our community is really mature now. It's not the time where it was 20 or 30 years ago. We are really mature. But that is something where we didn't do, which we can do again now. This is an opportunity because you need to sensitize the environment, the local community, your non-Muslim friends, people of faith, of no faith, other faith, they all need to be engaged. And they are sensitized right now that you can easily get this law passed, but you need to have an effort. Number two, I just also want to say this. Make a habit. The moment you see something anti-Islamic, Islamophobic on any media outlet, whether it's TV, radio, internet, or whatever, make a phone call to Ofcom. Make a complaint. We don't do that. Look, we all pay TV licenses, taxpayers' money. I was shocked a couple of days ago, after the incident of last week, that when the BBC on the news night, they showed the cartoon, that magazine, Charlie's Magazine's Survival, whatever publication they have done. BBC had never done that. The following day, they said on the website that they've made a change in their policy. But unless, from experience I'm saying this, unless you have a threshold of 500 complaints going to Ofcom, no one will take any action. We're not short in number. We can get more than 500 complaints. You get an action to the board of directors over there. They're saying, look, we found it offended. I mean, I saw it. I had never seen any of those images or cartoons coming. I was watching Newsnight, And immediately that image came. And I said, what is this? But this is where, brothers, we don't do these little things. And that's how, you know, all these campaign groups, the lobbying groups of the groups I've mentioned, that's how they've made the laws in this country. That's how what the Sheikh is saying, over the history, you need to understand how the system works. And that's where we are lacking. We didn't do that.
It's happening slowly and steadily, but
Yes,
as you
but
quite rightly
we
said,
should
inshallah.
do that. I mean, it's good that we should come up with practical solutions. Okay? I'm sure everyone is talking about with Quran and Hadith references. I myself is talking about with Quran and Hadith references. But that is, you know, at the level where we understand.
For ourselves.
Yes, but we need to come up with practical solution within the community.
Absolutely.
We need to talk with our colleagues, the non-Muslim colleagues. Look, I feel really offended. They need to see and feel that why I'm feeling the pain. I remember 2006 when the Da Vinci's Code came out, the book came out, the movie came out. It was a big hoo-ha cry, you know, all the way across Europe. I took 2 priests in the hospital to the cafeteria, just to, you know, break the silence and to understand what was happening and to explain to them that it is offending to you, it is more offending to me. Because what you're calling Isa alayhi salam and then all that what is blasphemous is more blasphemous for us. And that's the point I took and explained to them. Look, the reason we're feeling so highly about it, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we honor more than our lives, our parents, our children. But they need to understand this first.
Inshallah, barakallah fikum. On an up note, which is true, really, as I said on Wednesday, one of the circles, the scholars and the mashayikh and the tullab and the teachers, really our principal job is just to make sure that the Sharia understandings stay intact. But that's just like step 1. Step 2 is proactive action. But that is happening slowly and steadily. So let's just end with 2 things. That in the midst of so much kufr in the world, where so many other people of other religious traditions have lost the rope that connects them to their religious understanding, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left our ibadah, the way we pray and fast, has left our understanding of the Quran in terms of how the Sahaba, the process of the Sahaba, He left it intact even now. And day by day, more and more people are coming back to practice in the deen, iman and ilm and amal. And this is a miracle in our time, and we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. And we haven't even done anything to deserve it. We're still asleep, and Allah has given us all of these beauties. That's one thing. That in this time, there are still remnants of the people who follow the Deen al-Hanif of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's Muslims, it's Islam. We are the Hunafa amongst the Mushrikun. And that's a ni'mah from Allah. Secondly, as He taught us the lesson of, maybe from Ta'if, these mockers and stone throwers who have made my feet and my body bruised and blooded, don't crush them, O angel, because maybe from their children will come people of Tawheed and Iman. Then here we are, Ahlul Ta'if. Our people here, they are the people of Ta'if. We just have to behave with the adab of Nabuwah, with the etiquettes of prophethood, to the people of Ta'if. So we should have good hope, courage, work hard and patience. And finally, thirdly, no doubt at all, in my mind, when I see young Muslims, and by young I mean like 30 years old, 20 years old, 35, seeing that I'm 50 now, being in that, mashallah, they're learning their deen traditionally, they understand this environment well, they're much more educated than once before, they're very savvy, an intrinsic part of the community. And they're beginning to do something, mashallah. So they are working on the good that the elders set in stone. They're standing on the shoulders of giants, but they're doing something. So in the end, have hope that the nur of Allah will take its place properly, as Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam promised. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره الكافرون أو ولو كره المشركون. It is Allah who sent His Prophet with guidance to the religion of truth, that He may make it supreme over all other religions, even if the non-Muslims detest it. The only thing is, Allah won't give victory to us unless our hearts have Iman, have love for Amal Salih, have Tawbah, have faqr, neediness to Allah, and don't have filled with revenge and hate, but are filled with rahmah and shafaqah for people who are misguided. We won't take the center out to them, we will help them come to the center. The center meaning the core. Okay? If you take the center of something out, then it doesn't become the center, it becomes the fringe. Okay? But that's how we should have. We should have a vision. We should have a vision like the Prophet had. And we just ask Allah for tawbah. But this is a good time to know that without Allah's help, we Muslims ourselves, we will only make things worse. But if we realize that, Ya Allah, 1.2, 1.6 billion, 1.8 billion perhaps of us on this planet, that is close to 1 in every 4 people on this planet as Muslims, close to. And yet we still can't do whatever. It's because we haven't connected with the one who can do all things. Yes, we are praying, alhamdulillah, yes, we are fasting, but there needs to be even deeper than that. And then when Allah smiles upon us, all things are possible. We ask Allah for tawfiq. Subhana rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Salamun ala al-mursaleen. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. And just that point, our politics is important, but it always needs to be connected to faqr and tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Really, I read a lot, and I'm just an academic from. And Brother Ifan will tell you all types of books I have in my house, from philosophy, from science to economics, let alone deen and whatever. But even then, I know in my heart of hearts, it's not my learning, it's not my savvy understanding of things, it's not this, it's Allah. And if I don't connect to Allah, nothing happens. Our problem is, our challenge will be that as we move along this social political work that needs to be done, Shaitan will whisper us to more, look how much you're doing yourself. And as soon as we come to that point of look how much we're doing ourselves, and we forget it's Allah, all is lost, even if we've gained the whole world. Rather, we want to be active as tahqiq al-ubudiyyah. We are slaves of Allah. And we are fuqara, we are needy of Allah. If we can inculcate this true neediness of Allah, then really Allah loves the needy, because it defines clearly Malik, Rabb, and the Ibad, the slave, and the master. And that's what Allah loves. And He will give us the Lord, because He's already promised in the book of Allah. Jazakumullah khairan wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Barakallahu feekum for your contributions. Barakallahu feekum.